Great. Well, here we are. I can't even, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how I would feel. It's been a long process coming. It's been a long time to get to this moment. And this is just a moment. This is just the beginning of what we're doing. This is not the culmination of anything. This is the beginning of an entire thing. And I'm excited to do this with you guys. I didn't have a dream of necessarily what this would look like. Originally, I was in Grand Rapids, and it was going to be at Founders Brewery in Grand Rapids. And then God called us up here, and I was like, well, I guess brewery church isn't really the thing that God is moving us to. And then we decided to start a men's group in Ram's Tattoo Shop in Traverse City Tattoo. And then God was like, do you remember that idea that I gave you a long time ago to start a church and a brewery? And I said, yeah, because that's kind of how I talk to God. And he said, well, get on that. And so here we are. And I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to be here. We're starting a brand new series, as is fitting with our launch here today. We just wanted to introduce ourselves to you guys, to who we are as Restoration, which is why the entire series is called Who We Are. We're pretty much straight to the point, and so that's kind of how we name our series as well. So we've got Who We Are because we're introducing ourselves, and this is who we are. So why call it something creative when it's just this is who we are? And we're excited about it. And we're going to be going through our vision. We're going to be going through our mission statement. Not all today. Today we're just going to be going through the vision of Restoration Church. And in the future, the next 3 weeks, we're going to be going over each word in our mission statement, which is transparency, community, and change. That's our mission statement. Transparency with Christ and with one another. Community with Christ and with one another. And then change from Christ to us and through us to the world. And that's a lot to say, so we just say transparency, community, and change, and you can figure out the rest as we go along, right? But today we're not talking about any of those things. Today we're talking about people following Jesus. And I had an opportunity this week. Some friends of ours gifted us, my wife and I, a trip. This was back in the springtime, and they're like, hey, would you want to take a vacation with us to Las Vegas? We've got the plane tickets for you, and we've got the hotel for you. You just have to show up and get on the plane with your ticket and ID and stuff. You just have to show up. And we're like, oh, okay, sure, great. I've never been to Vegas before, never really had a desire to go to Vegas before, because I'm a good Baptist kid, and I just, all of the things that happen in Vegas, I wasn't ready for. I feel like, so we went on this vacation. We went, my wife and I went to Vegas, and which is weird to say. I feel like anytime, I was telling my wife this yesterday, I feel like anytime I go to a city, especially a city like that, I feel like somebody needs to sit me down, kind of like Santa sat down Buddy the Elf, to explain all the differences of going to the city, They were handing out cards in Las Vegas. One of them we thought was a card. It was not a card. It was protection. So that was cool. Needless to say, I don't belong in Vegas. I just don't. I'm a fish out of water, as you might say, in Vegas. We ordered drinks the first night we were there. So we get off the plane, we go to the hotel, and we're kind of hungry, and so we get drinks. I ordered a Guinness, and it cost $10, first of all, so I'm Dutch. And so this is not a great thing. I could buy a six-pack of that for $8, and instead I'm buying 16 ounces for 10, or maybe 12 ounces. It was probably only 12. I don't know how much it is. How much is it, December? Is it 16? Okay, great. 16 ounces for $10. That's almost $1 an ounce. Well, okay, it's like 60 cents an ounce, but still, that's a lot. Anyway, That's not the point. The point is, I go up to the counter, because you had to go up to the counter to order food, and they were explaining the whole process. And I go up to the counter, and I'm like, I'd like the street tacos, please, the steak ones. Yes, those ones for $18. Yeah, cool. I didn't know that was a rare thing in Las Vegas. But yeah, I'll have the $18 street tacos. My wife will have the $13 guacamole with little bits of gold leaf in it, I think, is why it's so expensive. Sorry, I'm so Dutch, I can't get past that, of how much that was. And the guy it was like this food truck inside the restaurant, and this guy was like, he goes, so here's how it works. You take this little number, and then you go sit down at your table. And I said, okay. I didn't say okay. I said, okie dokie. Because I'm from the 90s, and apparently okie dokie is a cool phrase to say. I'm sure no one in Vegas has heard the phrase okie dokie ever, said with all seriousness, not like sarcastically, but just like, hey, okie dokie, I'm going to go get my New Balance shoes back on and head on over to my table with my White Claw. And anyway, so I don't fit in there. I don't fit in Vegas. And I'm happy to report that I certainly don't fit in at Vegas. It was cool. We went seeing around the sites and everything. I also don't really fit in at parties very well. I kind of sit in the corner. I don't like being around everyone. I'll find a chair, and then I'll sit in that chair for the rest of the party. I'm just not a comfortable person. My wife can attest to that, to go to parties with, because I'll just be in the corner. And that's kind of been the way that I've been my entire life. I just don't fit in very many places. In high school, I was friends with everybody. I had 3 really close friends who were all older than me that went to church. We did things like study the Bible together and go to quiz practice, which quiz was this whole other thing that we did as Baptist kids, where you would go and they would ask you questions about the Bible, and Clayton knows, and you have to like step off your seat. You'd like stand up to answer the question. I never answered a question once because, again, I like to just sit. And so that was me. I was still friends with everybody. I still, whatever. I played football and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't fit in. And I think a lot of us can feel that way, right? Where we just, whatever it is in life, we just don't really fit in. Probably why we're all here today, because we're like, no other church would have me. I don't know. A brewery? Okay, sure. Let's do it in the brewery. Then maybe they'll accept me there. But we're going to be in Matthew 9 today, and the words are going to be on the screen. And this mission statement, or this vision of people following Jesus, is what we're after. People following Jesus. And I hope to point out this morning that people following Jesus, anybody can fit in to people following Jesus. And I hope that we can be a church where you can fit in, where you feel comfortable here, where you feel like you're wanted here. I'm just going to stop and listen to Star Wars a moment, if I may. I was thinking on the way in this morning, I was like, this is going to be awesome. We're in walls. There's no distractions for me anywhere. Nope, we got Star Wars. So it was, yeah. Okay, so we're going to be in Matthew 9, starting in verse 9. This is one of my favorite passages, things that Jesus did. Oh, it's so good. In verse 9. As Jesus passed on from there, so he was leaving somewhere, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he rose and followed him. And as Jesus reclined at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." So that's our text for this morning. And I love that passage of Scripture because it flies in the face of everything I learned growing up. Not everything I learned growing up. I learned really great theology growing up, but it flew in the face of everything else that I learned growing up in that small Baptist church, that I had to isolate myself from the world, that I had to stay away from everyone in the world because I couldn't get their filth on me. If I were to go into the world at all, it would be a very, very bad thing for me to do. So I decided that I was not going to go out into the world. And if you want to hear the rest of the story of how we got to this point here, because you're like, how did we make this leap then? Because what you're describing is complete opposite of what we're doing here. I can tell you the whole story later on. Maybe in our small group time, if you want to know about that. But I didn't see this story in Scripture. I didn't see Jesus going out. See, what's happening is Jesus calls Matthew, and we might not completely get why this is a big deal for Jesus to call Matthew, but Jesus called Matthew, also known as Levi. Matthew was kind of a scoundrel. Matthew was what was called a tax collector. That means that he, as you can kind of guess, I like that they said things like how we name our series, who we are. So he's a tax collector. He collected taxes. That's what Matthew did. He's like an IRS agent today. Only you could be really corrupt in these times. So in this setting, in this time frame, in this culture, what the tax collectors would do is they would work on behalf of the government, and the government would say, this is how much money is owed to us. And so these tax collectors would go and get it. Not only would they go and get it, but they could pocket any extra that they could get out of people. So it's like, oh, you owe, if the government says you owe $50 in taxes, the tax collector would go and say, you owe $150. Sorry, that's what the tax is. They would pocket $100, give Rome $50, and there you go. So not very many people liked tax collectors. Just like today, not very many people like the IRS agents, right? Like, you didn't pay enough in your taxes. It's never a good thing when the IRS shows up, right? They're like, oh, you came to give me more money. Awesome. No, if we're not going to get into law stuff, but you're probably breaking it if you're not paying them. So this is who Jesus calls. He calls Matthew, the tax collector. And Matthew says, this is awesome. I'm going to drop everything and follow you. He had a lot to lose, Matthew did, in leaving all this behind. You got Peter, who was a fisherman. He just had to leave his fishing pole. Matthew had to leave this entire business behind him. And he follows Jesus. Matthew followed Jesus. Not only does he follow Jesus, but he invites all of his friends to come over to Matthew's house. He invites all his friends over to Matthew's house and is like, hey, guys, I got this really cool guy coming over. His name's Jesus. You're going to fit in just great with him. Just come on over. And who are Matthew's friends? Other tax collectors. Other people who are corrupt, sinners, prostitutes, the least, like whoever you can think of. These were the people that were showing up at Matthew's house to hang out with Jesus. These are the people showing up to hang out at Matthew's house with Jesus. And then these religious people walk by, church people walk by. I'm sorry, Pharisees. I get them mixed up sometimes. The Pharisees walk by and they see Jesus' camel out front, or a donkey. He saw Jesus' donkey out front of Matthew's house. And they see Jesus inside Matthew's house, and they're like, wait a second. That's not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. You can't eat with those people. And the Pharisees asked Jesus' disciples, they asked Jesus' disciples that were there, hey, what's your teacher, doing with those people? What's your teacher doing with those people? And I read that and I see myself. I read that and I see myself. I see people going out into the world, a little kid, little me, high school me, early 20s me, and seeing Jesus going out and ministering to those people, and I didn't want anything to do with it. So I would use words like those people and you're doing it wrong without personalizing a single thing of it for myself. And as we talked about several weeks ago, if you were here, if not, you can find it all online on Facebook or YouTube or on our website. The key word is go. Jesus calls us to go. But before Jesus calls us to go, we got to get the ground base going. And that is that Jesus invites you. Jesus invites you personally. The Pharisees rejected it. People of the religious law at that time rejected Jesus. I encourage us as a church, individually, as people, to not reject what Jesus has called you to do. Jesus calls you specifically. Now, the very groundwork of that is the gospel. The very groundwork is the gospel. Where Jesus came down to this earth, there was sin in the world, there's corruption in the world, there always has been since the days of Adam, and it needed a sacrifice. So Israel would always bring animals to sacrifice. And as they would bring these animals to sacrifice, they kept doing it, kept doing it, kept doing it. There had to be a final sacrifice once and for all for all of humankind, for mankind to come into relationship with Jesus. God cannot be in the presence of sin. And so he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die, to live a perfect life, a sinless life, so that he could take the payment of sin for you and for me. And some of you are like, Brian, I don't know why we're going over this again. I know the gospel. But I feel like we could preach the gospel every single Sunday, and we probably will preach the gospel every single Sunday, because the gospel never gets old. The gospel will always be the gospel. It will always be good news. And frankly, I don't think it always sets in all the way. So you know how like teachers will have to kind of keep going over the curriculum again and again and again, like or in high school and sports, you got to keep going over the game plan every single week. Football players have to learn how to tackle again every single week because we don't let it sink in. And until we get it right, we're just going to keep talking about the gospel. Until we get it right, until we're more about grace and mercy and love than anything else, we have to keep going back to the gospel. Go back to the basics every single time. So Jesus invites you. I can't stress that enough. Next thing. Oh, wait, before we go to the next thing. He's back there on the slides. The Pharisees tried to snag Jesus all the time. They would try to snag Jesus in a thing. They would try to snag him like, ooh, what do you think about divorce, Jesus? And then he would give them what he thought about divorce, which was not what they were expecting. And we're going to cover divorce in several weeks from now in another series we're doing called Mountain of a Message from a Mountain, which is on the Sermon on the Mount. It's the entire Sermon on the Mount message, but I thought that was a funny title, so I named it that. The Pharisees were always trying to snag Jesus in something. And I feel like people today are trying, especially with what we're doing right here at Restoration, people are going to try to snag me, us, the church, in something. And our response is always, look at what Jesus did, look at Jesus, go to the gospel, grace, mercy, and love. Every single time. Why? Because that's what God and Jesus have offered us every single time. When Jesus stops offering us grace, love, and mercy, then we can stop offering other people grace, love, and mercy. When Jesus starts putting qualifiers on grace, love, and mercy, that's when we'll start putting qualifiers on grace, love, and mercy. But until then, that's the answer. All right, now the next point. Jesus invites you. So then what we do is we invite your circle to Jesus. Like what Matthew did. Matthew had this encounter with Jesus. Matthew encounters Jesus big time, decides to follow him completely. And then he says, hey, I've got a bunch of friends. Can we all go hang out? And Jesus is like, yeah, absolutely. I love to hang out. Do you have any water? I can make this party great. Got it? Cool. A little chuckling. But it begins with a relationship. Invite your circle, not to church, not to a thing, but to a who. Invite your friends, invite your circle to Jesus. You know who knows your friends? You. You know who doesn't know your friends? Me. So invite your circle to Jesus. Is that cool? Invite your circle to Jesus. And you don't have to know everything there is to know about Jesus in order to invite your friends. You might say, oh, yeah, but Brian, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge. I haven't memorized the Bible. I don't know this enough. I don't know this quite enough to feel comfortable in inviting my friends. And to that, I would say, you got me. Never mind. Never mind. Forget I even said it. That's a dumb thing. But did you know that the Lions are starting their season today? The Detroit Lions? I'm pretty pumped about that. Anybody else pumped about the Detroit Lions starting their season? No? Okay, great. My son is. I'm just going to explain to you why I'm so pumped about the Lions, because I've been a fan ever since I was a little kid. I was born in 84. The Lions drafted Barry Sanders in 88, 89. He was a phenomenal running back, and he retired way too soon. He had 2,000-yard seasons. He was the greatest running back to ever live. And then they drafted Calvin Johnson, and he's the greatest wide receiver that ever lived. I don't care what you say. It's Calvin Johnson, all right? Then they got Matthew Stafford. They've got this great team. I know they haven't won a playoff game since the mid-90s, but I love them anyway. I don't care if they're going to go 3-13 this year. I don't think they are. I think they're going to the Super Bowl, but that's just me. That's every Lions fan, and there was no preseason to stop me from thinking that, all right? So they are going to the Super Bowl, mark my words. That's a restoration guarantee. I don't know that much about, say, their left tackle in 1995. I can't tell you who their fourth-string receiver was 10 years ago. But I feel like I did a great job just now inviting you all to like the Lions with me, or at least feel sorry for me. Do you see what I'm getting at? You don't have to know everything to invite people to Jesus. You just have to know one thing. How did he change your life? We'll figure out the details. God's pretty good at stuff. He'll point you in the right direction. Just start going. Do you know how much easier it is to drive a car and turn the wheel when the car's in drive? It's pretty hard to turn the wheel and go anywhere if you're not hitting the gas and you're not turning the wheel. You can turn the wheel all you want, but you're just going to make squeaky noises. You have to go in order. So let's invite people, not to this. They'll come to this. It's no big deal. Invite people to Jesus. Invite people to Jesus. Because then when we do that, we fill the church with those people. Brian, you shouldn't say those people. Well, who did you just think of? Did somebody come to mind? Did a name come to mind? Did a type of person pop in your head when I say those people? If that person came to mind, or those people, if those people came to mind, if that happened, invite that person to Jesus. Invite those people to Jesus, because that's what Jesus did. We could fill this place up with a whole bunch of other church people from other churches and go crazy. We could do that if we wanted to, but why? We would just be changing the people from going from that church to that church. And if you came from a different church today, I love you for it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for showing up. If you weren't getting it there or whatever, if you're just here to say hello, that's cool too. All right, I'm not dogging people going from church to church to church. That's fine. Do whatever you want. But my interest, and we're going to need people from, honestly, we're going to need people from other churches to help us invite people to Jesus. But we want to fill the church with people who have never experienced Jesus before in their lives. We want to fill Right Brain to a safe distance and a safe number in 2020 to Jesus. We want to fill Right Brain with people who are following Jesus. And here's the other thing about filling the church with those people is I know we're not always going to get along. Not everybody's going to get along with every person that comes in here. Matthew probably didn't get along with Peter or some of the other fishermen. You want to know why? At least not at first. You want to know why? Think about it. Matthew was a tax collector. Peter owned a business. They were in the same area. Do you think Peter saw Matthew and was like, yeah, we got Matthew? I don't think so. I think Peter was probably more like, oh, crap. You got that guy? I'm okay with you inviting fishermen. I'm okay with you inviting other people who the sons of thunder, whoever it is. You can look up that reference later if you want to. I don't care who you invite, but really, did you have to invite Matthew? Do you know how much money he took from me? Did you have to invite Matthew? I like this place better before Matthew was here. It was a lot more comfortable for me before Matthew was here. Now fill that, whatever that Matthew is for you, and start saying to yourself, grace, love, and mercy. Grace, love, and mercy. Because there are going to be people in this church, in this building, people that you come across to. I hope this is not the only time that you frequent this building. Unless you're an alcoholic, I would rather you didn't. But I hope this isn't the only time, because guess what? People far from Jesus are in this building on a weekly basis. Why? Because we're out in the public. And when we're out in the public, when we're out in society, there's going to be people far from Jesus. And it's our job to fill his church with his people. Brian, you didn't say those people. I know, because those people are his. And we don't get to decide who gets Jesus' love and who doesn't. You know who decides that? Jesus. So we're going to fill the church with those people. We're going to fill the church with people following Jesus. We're going to fill the church with people following Jesus. Now, what does it mean to follow Jesus? I'm not going to pick that up yet. What does it mean to follow Jesus? Well, it means you're a Christian, right? You identify as a Christian. Well, where did that term come from? Christian. It's in the Bible a couple of times, but do you know the word Christian, actually you could call it a Christian. A Christian. When you add that little suffix onto something, either an IAN or an AN, that means that you belong to that whatever it is. That means you belong to that person, that society, that political party, right? Or that country. You could say, I am an American, right? That would mean you belong to America. You are in America. You are an American. When we add that suffix on, which is a pretty cool word, say out loud, suffix. It almost could be a slang word, but I don't know how. So I'm going to stop saying that. So we have Americans. We've got my mind just went blank. So we've got Christians, right? Christians means that if you're a Christian, that means that you belong to Jesus. And when we were in Vegas, I tell you we were in Vegas, pretty interesting. We were there, and we're on Las Vegas Boulevard. We were having dinner, and on that strip, there's these cars that kept going by with American flags, and they're honking their horns, and they were wanting everybody to vote for Donald Trump. And don't worry, this is not going to get political. My heart sank. I can tell you, everything I saw in Vegas, my heart sank more when I saw this than I did anything else in Vegas. My heart sank when on the truck that drove by, honking its horn, being ridiculous, it said, "Evangelicals for Trump." And they were getting flipped off, they were getting yelled at, they were getting everything. Do you know why that bothered me so much? I don't care if you vote for Trump, I don't care who you vote for. Because you're a Christ-E-N. And if you're a Christian, thank you, Star Wars. If you're a Christian, that means you belong to Jesus. You don't belong to a political party. You do not belong to a country. You belong to Jesus Christ. That's it. And if you want to sway somebody to vote your way, that's fine. But do not make it more than Jesus. Because Jesus is the one thing that we are going to build this church on. It is not going to be built on a single other thing except Jesus Christ. So what it means to follow Jesus, we can find that in Matthew 16:24. It says, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. If anyone would come after me, if anyone would follow me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. What does it look like for you today to deny yourself? What does it look like today for you to say, I'm going to lay something down? I'm going to lay that part of me down, that pride that I'm holding on to, that political party that I'm holding on to, that addiction that I'm holding on to. What does it look like for you to deny yourself and follow Christ? If I'm denying myself, it doesn't mean that here's what I think for this. If I'm going to deny myself, that means people are not going to see Brian Williams anymore. They're going to be seeing Jesus Christ. To the people around him. To the people that I encounter. I'm going to deny myself, my own thoughts, my own opinions, my own whatever I think is right and wrong. I'm going to deny those things and focus on Jesus Christ. And focus on what he's done for me and spread that to people around me. Sure, it might mean I'm going to have to hold my tongue some. It might mean that I have to let some things go. And this is not a guilt trip, but I feel like I should be able to do that because Jesus let go of quite a bit. And that's an understatement. Jesus let go of his royalty. Jesus let go of his godness. Now, he was fully God, fully man. But Jesus denied himself, denied his throne for the sake of us. So that we can belong, so that we can fit in. And that's why I hope that you fit in with people following Jesus. Wherever this looks like, whatever this looks like for you. I hope that as you go from here and with family and friends, that you can keep this in mind to show Jesus to the world. So that other people can fit in with people following Jesus. Be like a chameleon. Let's pray together. Father God, thank you so much for this morning. God, thank you for what you've done for us. I pray that, God, we would get it. God, that we would be people following you, that this wouldn't just be the vision statement for Restoration Church, but God, that this would be a way that we live, that people would see somebody from this church and be like, that person there, they seem like they got it. Lord, help us to shine your light on a dark place, on a dark world. God, thank you for Restoration Church. Thank you for your Son leading the charge. God, I pray that he would lead the charge in our lives. And it's in your name, the precious name of Jesus, that we pray. Amen. Thus concludes the very first service at Right Brain for Restoration. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. We have small groups now. If you want to get into a group, there's some kids stuff that December is going to be doing with the kids, which is pretty awesome. If you want to hang out, enjoy something from Right Brain. Are you open at 11 or noon? Right now, they're open. So, yeah. So we can do that. Real quick, I just want to throw this out there. If you have any desire to give, we want to let you know a little bit about how we do this. So our giving is a little bit different in that, right now nobody's passing money around or any of that kind of stuff anyway. So this makes it easy for us to do whatever we want. But you have an opportunity to give to our community account. And we're really excited about our community account. We have got two separate accounts set up. We've got a community account and an overhead account. Our overhead account is for overhead, to fund the ministry, fund what we're doing here. The community account goes back into the community, both globally and locally, all around the world. And 100% of your gift in that community account goes right back into the community around us, which is pretty awesome. So we're partnering with World Orphans, we're partnering with Charity Water, we're partnering with Freedom Builders, and then we're doing some stuff all around here as well. And we can let you know about some events that we're going to be having coming up. I got to come up with a name for one. But in October, we're going to be doing something called, I think we're going to call it Tarps for Pints, which is you bring in a tarp or a sleeping bag for the homeless. And Russ at Right Brain has been generous to say, hey, if anybody who brings in a tarp or a sleeping bag, we'll give them $1 beer. So that's pretty cool. So we're going to be partnering with them on that. But you can give to our community account if you just go to our website, restorationtc.com, and you just click on Give and click on the community account, and you can donate whatever you want. And all of that, like I said, goes right back into the community. So we're pretty pumped about that. If you have any questions about who we are, what we're doing, any of that kind of stuff, you can ask me after I get done talking here. And also, you can come back next week when we're talking about transparency. So thank you guys so much. Small groups start whenever they want to start. We'll see you.